Hello loves, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Santa Muerte. This was a highly requested video that somebody requested on one of the weekly healing circles, and so that's what we're going to cover today. It was requested for me to cover Santa Muerte the same way that I've been covering my Comedic Spirituality series, so that's what I'm going to do. I am going to be breaking down her colors, okay? Separate video. There's going to be a dedicated video for each of her colors, so come back for that. Make sure you're subscribed for that. But today we're just going to be breaking down the basics, offerings, tools, etc., so that way you can better understand Santa Muerte. Okay, so first and foremost, who is Santa Muerte? Santa Muerte is the personification of death in specifically Mexican culture. She is very much a universal spirit, but she embodies death energy to its totality, which is why she can be worked with for literally anything, and why she also works with literally anyone. Santa Muerte is known to be very open to working with all types of people because, again, death is universal. Her energy and her spirit is very much a universal energy. And so it's important to understand how death happens in your life, both in like small ways and in really big ways, like somebody dying in your family or you going through a new transition. So let's say you were single and you were trying to manifest a boo thing, okay, and then now you got a boo thing. Well, you're now going through a transition where you are no longer single. That is the death of you being single, right? And so it's important to understand the small things and the big things. So when it comes to Santa Muerte, because that's how we work with her, is by tapping into death energy and trying to see how we need to use time within this lifetime in a way that we're actually being productive and doing it, the things that we need to do in alignment and at peace. That's really where we're coming from with working with death. Now, Santa Muerte, her name, and I'm going to be referring to her as her, even though, again, her culto, which culto translates to cult, but there's not a cult of Santa Muerte, guys, okay? It's not a cult. It's just that the Spanish language is different than the English language, okay? It's a Romance language, so even the way that Santa Muerte is expressed is seen more as a feminine, more nurturing, like spirit. But Santa Muerte is a combination of two different spirits, Native American spirit specifically, and I'm going to emphasize that because I've seen a couple of people try to say that Santa Muerte is an Orisha, Santa Muerte is a Loa, which makes no sense, okay? Santa Muerte is a Native American spirit. I cannot personally pronounce her Nahuatl name because that is its own language. I am Taino, I am not Mexican, therefore I am not Nahuatl either. So I don't know how to pronounce her traditional name, but she is the embodiment of two spirits together who rule over the underworld. And one is female, one is male, and they both come through and embody the energy of Santa Muerte. So Santa Muerte is genderless, is seen as genderless, but because of the Spanish language, she's very much implied as a feminine energy, especially because she's so nurturing and all of the way that she like manifests through. But she is worked through her more feminine side a lot. But she is seen as genderless. And I would personally say that she is two-spirit. For those who know what the term two-spirit means, it is a Native American term that embodies and encompasses all genders and all gender expressions, but it's also a very spiritual term. Only Native Americans can use the term two-spirit because it is very, very complex, and it is specific to different tribes. Different tribes have different roles for two-spirit people, which is why it's not an open term. But two-spirit embodies all of the LGBT terms into one as well, but it is also a spiritual thing. And so when it comes to looking at Santa Muerte and the way that Santa Muerte is seen as, you know, she very well shows up in a Grim Reaper form. Grim Reaper, naturally, I feel like in some cultures have been seen as more of a masculine energy, but in Mexico she's seen as a more feminine energy, but she is known very much to have the foundation of both of those Native American spirits, and it is important to understand that. But I personally see her as two-spirit. I think that she is a two-spirit spirit, and she embodies all genders and all expressions spiritually as well. She's also the patron saint of the LGBTQ community, so it makes sense, right? But yeah, she's also the patron saint of the LGBTQ community, and she very much works to protect them on a daily. And a lot of people within the LGBTQ community work with her for protection and for different things, for blessings and such, including to find partners and such. Fun fact, a week before I met Babe, I did a cleansing with, I literally lit a candle, the red one, La Roja, and I, just to cleanse any energy that was, you know, trying to stop me and Babe to come through. And I literally met her the week after when the candle finished. So it was like 7 days after I ended up meeting Babe. So yeah, she's really good at clearing and cleansing and removing any. I literally set intention. I was like, can you get all of my exes away from me? I'm trying to meet Babe. And she did the thing. So there's that. But she is seen as the embodiment of death and rebirth. Okay, so you have to understand that she's Native American. I cannot pronounce her Nawa names, but she is the embodiment of 2 Native American spirits who are married. So they both rule the underworld, but they're married, and so they rule different elements when it comes to death in the underworld and that transitionary process. But there are still elements of her Native American side, especially when it comes to like, for example, her animal specifically is owls. That's also the native spirits animal. It was owls. Now our northern native relatives have bad omens depending on the tribe that you're looking at. Owls are not seen as a pleasant animal spirit. They're seen in some tribes as a bad omen for something, and owls for Santa Muerte have different meanings. The first being death. It could be a warning, it could be you know, a transitionary or a highlighter, you know, highlighting something that is about to transition. Wisdom as well, and it is seen as a messenger, again, giving messages. So depending on, you know, when you start working with Santa Muerte, pay attention to owls and how they come up for you as well. Her main colors are red, white, and black. We're going to break down the colors in a different video, but just to break down a little bit of the main colors: red for love and emotions, anything that has to do with relationships, including family relationships. Her red, La Roja, would be called upon. White, La Blanca, which is her, this one is actually bone, but I see her as La Blanca for this one. I got this one in Mexico, and it's also fixed at the bottom. But La Blanca is seen for purification, knowledge, protection as well. And black for hex breaking and protection. Very, very much so. She is very much, when it comes to her practice, there's a Catholic background. You should know this about that, and it comes from colonization. Keep that in mind, because it absolutely affects, you know, some of the prayers that you might be doing if you're trying to work with Santa Muerte. Some of the prayers you might notice are very much like Catholic prayers, or specifically have a Catholic twang to it. So just keep that in mind, that there are Catholic influences. The Catholic Church and the Vatican are very much against Santa Muerte. There's been a huge propaganda war against Santa Muerte from the Catholic Church, because they don't like the people that it, you know, her culto specifically has risen a lot in Mexico. She is very much, she has a huge base in Mexico. That is the main place that works with her. But due to migrations, she's also in the southwest of the United States, as well as Canada and Spain. Yeah, in Spain. However, I will say, and I have to mention this, Spain works with her a little bit different than Mexico specifically. So you will see, if you get books of Santa Muerte in English, and I'm going to share some of mine in a second, but if you get books of Santa Muerte in English, they can be a little bit different than the Mexican written books, especially with the practices. They get a lot of really, you know, I've seen a lot of not only bad reviews, but also people saying like they don't like it. So to each their own. I personally didn't really like the some of the books that I've read that were very much written by some Spaniards, but you know, if her books that are written by Mexicans are written in Spanish, so you also have to keep that in mind. You might have to use a translator to get some of the books that I'm going to recommend, but you have to understand also that Santa Muerte, her culto in Mexico has a lot of curanderismo influence. It has a lot of Mexican brujeria influence in the practice. So it's not going to be Spanish brujeria, it's going to be Mexican brujeria, and it's going to have those elements. You can't just kind of like dismiss the culture that's being implied. In Spain, they work with her a little bit different over there. So just keep that in mind when buying books, because it also affects like different tools that are published. Like for example, these two decks, these are both tarot decks for Santa Muerte. And I personally like this one. I believe this one was made by someone who is Mexican. This one is absolutely my favorite one because it has more expressions of her colors than this one. This one was done by, I believe he's from Spain. I believe. Y'all, I believe. Hold on, I'm trying to get it out of here. But this one is absolutely my favorite because it has more of her colors. You see her physical like colors. So when I'm shuffling with these and I see, you know, the white one, the red one, like the black one, the green one, you know, like I actually see her colors show up in here. I can actually see, okay, this is her version that I'm I can't talk. Specifically like need to be working with right now. It's that version. Like it's not just her basic 3 or anything like that. Like you see, that's the gold one. That one doesn't come up in the other deck. I feel like this one just has, you see the green one does not come up in the other deck either. Like I just feel like this one has a better representation of Santa Muerte in a tarot form. Like if you were gonna do a tarot of Santa Muerte, this one is just more accurate, and they did a really good job with the artistry. It gives the vibes that it needs to. If you know how to read the Rider-Waite, you'll understand the majority of the cards, but some of the cards are interpreted differently, so keep that in mind. But I like this one. I'm gonna have linked down below if you are, you know, want to get it. But this one is okay. It's just not, it doesn't have the depth that I need. Like the artistry is absolutely gorgeous. Like look at this. Look at this. Like it's very, very much giving gorgeous. I might actually sell this one because I don't use it as much. But it's absolutely gorgeous. It's just, I feel like it's just not my favorite one. But you can use this to do readings for Santa Muerte as well. But yeah, I just prefer the other one. It's up to y'all to decide. But this one definitely has a Spanish influence on it versus, you know, the other one I feel like has more of a Mexican influence on it. And it's also, this one is in Spanish. This one is in Spanish. One of the really quickly, I guess, one of the other decks that I like to use with her as well is Flowers from the Dead. It should be obvious why, but also just because of the different animals in here, and I just like working a lot with different symbologies and animal spirits. So sometimes I will pull out this deck for Santa Muerte, but for the most part, this is the deck that I use for her. So just like giving y'all that heads up. Also, before I forget, you can also work with her with La Loteria Mexicana, which is the Mexican Loteria, because there is a card for Santa Muerte in here. There's representations of death, but there's also a card for Santa Muerte, which is La Mexican Loteria is something that you can use as an oracle deck or a tarot deck. It really depends on how you personally work with it. I already made a video on it, but this definitely has a lot of cultural implications if you're going to work with this deck. It does not have any type of guidebook. I feel like if you're from Latin America, you would be able to apply a lot of the cultural significance from your own particular countries into this deck, because that's how I personally read it. So I don't read it some of the traditional ways that some Mexicans read it themselves, just because the deck itself is very much, I have different connections spiritually to some of the cards in this deck, what, you know, where Mexicans have a different interpretation to it. So it depends. It has a lot of cultural significance for you to be able to read it, but I did want to mention this because you can also pull some cards with this deck for Santa Muerte. Some of the other divination styles that people use to work with Santa Muerte, to divine with her, is through coin readings, as well as, you know, tarot readings, but also prayer and meditation are a big part of working with her in her practice. I'm going to break down a little bit of, especially with all of the propaganda that's happened with Santa Muerte in Spain. It's important to note that, you know, she gets demonized a lot because she literally works with anybody. She's known to work with anybody. And if any of her devotees, which is what you would be called if you were devoted to working with Santa Muerte, because it is a relationship, if any of her devotees ever say, no, you shouldn't, you be working with her, nobody else, but if you're Mexican can work with her or something like that, trust and believe they're gonna get reprimanded by that, because I've seen people say that and then get chewed up by Santa Muerte afterwards, because she is known to work with anybody. She does not like to be, she's not a closed practice. But again, you have to also understand her background. She is very much Mexican influenced. She's a Mexican Native American spirit. So you have to understand, even though she is the personified embodiment of death, you should still respect the culture in which it comes from, right? So just keep that in mind. But she's very much demonized, and a lot of, you know, it's a lot of propaganda. Oh, she works with the cartels and she works with all these people and all this stuff. You have to understand, when it comes to Santa Muerte, there's an element of justice that does come through and balance that does come through. So for example, for the people, like for example, if somebody is working with her and selling drugs or something like that, and is trying to just sell more, and you know, working with Santa Muerte to push whatever it is out, how did they get into that situation in the first place? Colonization, right? Because if it wasn't for colonization, we would all be in tribes. That's the tea. And so because the prosperity and the capitalist system and all of that stuff, working with someone who's doing something like that would not be seen as something bad by her. If anything, it's an element of justice, because they have been displaced from their people, from their tribe, from the community, in a way that it's like they're able to prosper or be a community together. And so to Santa Muerte is like, no, this is fair, because I'm not gonna let, you know, my children like go through hell. Like, why? How did they get into the situation in the first place? It's like trying to right some wrongs, and that's like the thing that you should keep in mind about that. She works with literally anybody, and so you shouldn't judge her negatively because she does that. She's not gonna just have that kind of, oh, you have to be a certain way. No, she's really, really amazing for so many different things, for healing, for love, for money, for abundance, for so many different things, spiritual growth, so many different things. And so you just can't limit her expressing the death energy in the way that it needs to. So it just, understand that that definitely needs to be understood. We talked about owls and their meaning with wisdom, messengers, and death. Specifically, owls are very much sacred to her, but pay attention, because if you happen to be part of a Northern American tribe or something like that, you know, owls have a different meaning in different tribes, so keep that in mind. But for the most part, if you're working with Santa Muerte and you're getting a lot of owl symbology, that's where it's coming from. For tools, so if you look at one of her statues, for example, there's a lot of different things. There's a different element of different things. The first one would be her scales. So justice, and some you won't see it. Some will be on the feet, some will be on the side, some will be on the throne. But you will see a scale of justice sometimes in some of her statues, or incorporated in her cuadros. Hold on, let me grab the cuadros. Incorporated in her cuadros, like right there. Justice and balance are something that she specifically works with and rules. It's specifically signifying balance, and again, death brings transitions. Transitions brings you to a place of calibration. So that's why when you're working with Santa Muerte, when you're going through the death process, when you are having these transitionary process, you are trying to rebalance yourself to some capacity. The globe itself, okay, the globe is seen as a emphasis on her dominion over the entire world. Why? Because death is universal. Okay, death happens to everybody. It's not just to one specific culture. Therefore, her energy is called in multiple cultures. So it's important to understand that death itself is universal. And this is one of the reasons why I really like that this deck has a representation of other death spirits. and I believe it's in the afterlife card. I'm gonna try to find it while I continue to talk. I believe it's in the afterlife card, but it's one of my favorite cards because it tells you so much about, yeah, it's this one. Oh, and más allá is called, and más allá is like, oh, how do I translate that? It's like farther than, oh, and más allá is almost, you can kind of see this as like a heaven kind of situation, but like it's mainly like the spiritual realm. I can't translate that right now for some reason, but you see different representations of death's energy in other cultures, and I'm glad that they added that there because it shows that it's not just and they also show her Native American spirit right there, but it also shows like her other expressions. It's not like it shows the different realms as well, and it shows that kind of communion of death spirits culturally throughout the world, which I thought was just really, really beautiful and interesting as well. So yeah, it's important to kind of understand that. But she has dominion over the death itself. Again, it's a universal process, and so it's gonna happen regardless of whether you work with her or not. You don't have to work with her for death to happen, but you're going to be constantly going through a transitionary process. Her hourglass specifically, it's not featured on here, but you will see it on some altar spaces, and some statues come with the hourglass, but they specifically highlight time and your time on this earth and how you're using it, how you're transitioning through the time on this earth, how you're using it wisely or not wisely. Time can be reset and inverted, so if you want to like give yourself more time, or like again, if you're cleansing yourself from a negative energy or you're closing off a relationship, you're going through a transition, so you're working through that hourglass. So keep that in mind. Her oil lamp, which is something that is also seen visibly in some statues as well. They specifically highlight the lights as well as revelations and guidance specifically as well. Now her scythe, which is this, okay, which is seen as it has a double meaning. It is seen as a weapon. It is also seen as a harvesting tool, because it is. You can use the scythe to harvest because you're cutting the field faster in like one swipe, but it's also a weapon. It is seen as a tool to remove and cleanse negative energies, and also as a way to collect abundance. So again, it gives you a lot of the duality and the messages of Santa Muerte and like how her energy manifests in like a collective sense. Offerings, tobacco, that should be a given. Again, she's a Native American spirit, y'all. Tobacco is sacred to like literally pretty much every Native American tribe on the continent of the Americas. So keep that in mind. Tobacco, coins, money, okay, cigarettes, candy, okay, alcohol specifically. I like to give her tequila or mezcal would be good as well. I like to stick to the Mexican alcoholic beverages because again, you gotta honor where it comes from. Perfume, chocolate, again, very much Mexican. Copal is one of my favorite incenses to give her. I got this one in Mexico when I went a couple of, it was like 2 years ago. I got this one in Mexico. It is absolutely delicious. Copal is like one of my favorite incenses, and I personally, it's my favorite. And it is very much native to Mexico, so it is one of my favorites to use for her. She also likes frankincense and myrrh as well, and I just recently started using this one. This is the one I bought recently, the Santa Muerte incense, which you can also get, but she specifically prefers the more natural fragrances, so I'm just letting you know. Okay, cake, coconuts, coffee, honey, cannabis, jewelry, money, apples specifically. Now, some people have different practices with the way that they give her apples, because there are ways to give her apples in multiples, or either 3 or 4, or just giving her one singular apple or as an offering or whatnot. But apples are actually very sacred to her, and the different colors of the apples that you're giving her can signify different things. Red being the more present color that she receives on a general basis, but we're going to go over the different apple colors and the different colors in the dedicated videos. So apples, fruits, water, of course, bread, flowers, specifically white flowers, she really loves. Agave are also really great for offerings. If she does not like an offering that you give her, she will tell you, or it will start rotting faster than, you know, it should be. I'm just saying. Herbs, tobacco, rue, cinnamon, bay leaf, rosemary, mint, and roses, okay, are her herbs, okay? Now, some of the things that I also like to add to some of my spells are my bone powder, specifically. She has different names. So she is also called La Flaquita, like the skinny one, because she is a skeleton underneath this robe, right? So she's called La Flaquita, La Niña Blanca. So this would be like La Niña Blanca. And that just means the, like, niña meaning child, like, so like white child. That's what it translates to, but there's a cultural aspect to it that I cannot explain. La Negra specifically, so La Negra being her black version. Black not associated to race, just her robe, okay? Her robe and her energetic expression, because her black version is different, but she's seen as La Negra or La Señora Negra. I like to use 3 different types of fragrances. I like to use her specific fragrances that have been made for her. This one is her black fragrance, so I use this specifically when I'm doing, like, you know, working with her La Negra version. Then there's the red. By the way, red, I don't know if I said it, but red is her most popular color, because black is seen many times as like, oh, black magic. Like, there's still a Catholic element to how people perceive certain elements of her, so you have to keep that in mind. But her red is her most popular color, and I like to use this one often, especially when it comes to her, like, fixing and blessing over, consecrating her candles. I like working with the red one, the black one, the white ones. I like working with the gold ones, the yellow ones. I do a lot of work for her other colors as well, so it's a little bit of every twang. And for her books that I'm going to recommend, so her first one that I'm going to recommend is La Biblia de Santa Muerte. It is written by, does it not have the author on here? Oh my god, I don't think it has the author on here. I don't think I've ever seen. No, it just says printed in Mexico. Wait, somebody write it. No, it just says printed in Mexico. La Biblia de la Santa Muerte. This translates to the Bible of Santa Muerte, and I'm going to try to link it below. Hopefully I can find it. I got this at a Botánica many years ago, but I'm going to try to find it for y'all so you guys can check that out. The next one is Práctica del Culto a la Santa Muerte. This is practices of the cult of Santa Muerte. Again, cult does not mean cult in English. It doesn't translate, the word doesn't translate properly. Let's just say that. It's not going to translate properly. But it just means like the group, the organization, like the way you practice with Santa Muerte is what I would actually translate it to. This one is written by Artemis Goodman. Okay, and this one is also in Spanish. This one is also really good. It has a lot of different, oh my god, so many different, this one I believe is the one that I wrote down, has a different interpretation, the flame interpretations. Yeah, this one has flame interpretations for Santa Muerte, so you can see if you're doing specifically working with her with fire, which you should always have on her altar as well, is one of the ways that you can see what messages, if you're not necessarily developed medium wise into working with her visibly, like you don't see her or hear her or whatnot, working with her with the flame is also very important. And the last one that I'm going to recommend is La Santa Muerte. Okay, this one's written by Oriana Velasquez, and this one is also really good. It's thicker than the other two. I think it's like a combination of the other two. But this one has a lot of really good information, and it also has, all of these have prayers, okay? All of these books have a ton of Santa Muerte prayers that you can do, that you can, you know, incorporate. There's literally prayers for everything. Anything that you can think of, it's on here, and it breaks down her colors, but all of these books are in Spanish, so just keep that in mind. It breaks down her colors, it breaks down different things that you might want to know or need to know. There are certain books, this one specifically has prayers for working with her every day of the week. And there's some certain days of the week that it's recommended you don't work with her, like Wednesday, for example, or like you don't petition anything to her, like Wednesday is, for example. So there's just kind of like a dive in with that. Now, when it comes to altars, and like we're gonna cover how to kind of do an altar, but there's different, again, colors. So who you have an altar, like who you have like the statue or the representation from, kind of speaks to who you're working with the most. And so it's important to understand that there's different ways to work with her. And if you don't have a statue per se, you can get a cuadro. A cuadro is literally like this kind of like card that has a prayer in the back, and you can say that prayer every day if you choose to, but there's one for each of her colors, especially if you're, these I take when I'm traveling. So if I'm flying somewhere, if I'm going, you know, I don't know, I'm going on a hike or something, this is a lot easier to carry than her whole entire statue, unless you wanted to do like a small one like this. I got La Roja, and this one is like a little necklace, right? And it was made in Mexico as well, and it's fixed at the bottom. A lot of the statues of her that are made in Mexico are fixed at the bottom. They're blessed and consecrated and are fixed at the bottom. There is a way to fix them when you get home, so you could like bless it and welcome her into her space. And again, I'm going to do that in a separate video because I don't want to make this video too long. But you can carry like a little one, or you can carry a cuadro. It's a really, really easy way to work with her. And just, you can even use, something that I like to do is that you can use the tarot cards as a where did I put the deck? You can use the tarot cards as a representation of her. If you're kind of want a smaller space, you can literally pull out a card from here and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna work with this color, or I'm going to represent her in this way. If you're trying to be a little bit more incognito, that is a way to work with her as well. But I really like the cuadros because you can do a little compact altar, really small, travel size, something like the altar, with no problems. But yeah, this one I got in Mexico. I personally picked this one myself. I love this one. It's made out of bone, not human bones, bone, okay? And my little red one as well, which I take with me. Sometimes I do like small altars depending on where I'm going, or if I'm doing an offering, and I don't want to carry a bigger one. Granted, some of her statues can get really, really big, so keep that in mind. But oh wait, did I mention this one? I'm sorry, I just looked at it. You can also use the canela, the cinnamon fragrance, if you do not find the her fragrance as far as like to bless and consecrate candles before you use them. I also like using the canela one, the cinnamon one. Just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if I mentioned it. So yeah, that's pretty much covers everything when it comes to basic information. We're gonna dive in deeper into her colors and her practices within the Santa Muerte spirituality series on the channel. I think that's what I'm gonna call it. And then we'll go over, like, you know, working with different candles, different prayers that you can use, different rituals that you can use as well. And yeah, we'll like dive in deeper into that. But I hope that this answered the questions and like a little bit gave a lot of the background and information that you guys wanted to know, because I know a lot of people were waiting for this video. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I literally did my eyes to go with my earrings that I got from Mexico. I have the little turquoise skull on them just for this video, just for y'all. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I will see you guys in the next video. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to be a Patreon member, the link will be down below. If you want to be a channel member, the link will also be down below. I will definitely see you loves in the next video.